Hello, welcome back to Fallout 76. We have some good news, and I'm glad that I can share this. But it seems that Bethesda has actually listened to the community, and they will be increasing the rewards for escorting caravans. Pretty much anybody who's actually tried to escort other people's caravans, aside from the glitch that I shared, knows that the rewards for escorting other people's caravans are just too low. You get 10% of the supplies that the owner gets, so in other words, you get somewhere between 1 to 5 supply for each run, which is ridiculously low, especially when you take into account that the cost for upgrading your employees or improving the feed of your Brahmin typically goes into the hundreds of supplies. So as you can see, running other people's caravans is just not a winning strategy. It's a waste of your time. That's something that I have mentioned in other videos, and I would like to think that I've played a small part in getting this through. But at the same time, I'm not arrogant enough to believe that I was the one who caused this change. But hopefully I've contributed. That's all I ask for. Ultimately, we all just want the game to be better than it is, right? And at the moment, escorting caravans is just not a good idea. So therefore, this is actually a great step. So let's take a second to commend Bethesda for actually listening to the community. And hopefully, the reward that they choose to give us for escorting other people's caravans becomes much more worthwhile. This is meant to come out around next month. They haven't specified any particular date, but I'm guessing that this will involve some kind of hot fix that will involve bringing down the servers for a minute or so, just like we had recently with the stability issues. But at the same time, they've also committed to fixing some of the issues that we have noted with the latest few updates, and the Power Armor HUD is mentioned by name, so I'm guessing that that one's been resolved. It just has to be rolled out. Sadly, they still don't have a grasp on why the caravans are running for so long, so if you are still experiencing these issues, then it's a good idea to let them know. Like I've done in my previous videos when I noted where exactly I was getting those issues with the Brahmin turning back on themselves. Hopefully this kind of feedback will help the developers. But at the same time, going back to the rewards for escorting caravans, they don't tell us what they are. So I'm guessing, I'm hoping that we're going to get somewhere between 50% of the supplies, or, like I saw someone mention, they might give us rewards like modules. That would make up for some of the issues that we've had. So either some kind of drastic increase to the number of supplies you get for escorting, and or some extra goodies like modules. That would bring it on par with other public events and actually make it worthwhile to escort caravans. So all of this stuff is great. But at the same time, let's talk about how we could fix the caravan system altogether. Because like I've said before, there are some issues with the way it's been implemented. I think some of the ideas are really good, some of the principles that they're trying to go for. For instance, trying to provide an activity that is different from what the other activities that we have are. So some kind of change of pace compared to your public events and your daily ops. So the principle of what they were trying to do with the caravans I think is great, but the execution wasn't good. So while we're talking about some of the fixes that the devs are planning to push out in order to improve the system, let's take it a step further and talk about how else it could be improved. And of course I'm not sitting here trying to be the arbiter of what the game should be, right? So what I'm hoping to do is provide some suggestions. And hopefully this video will also stimulate other people to share their thoughts. And perhaps Bethesda might even come across these ideas and choose to implement some of them into the game. So like I said before, these are suggestions. These are my ideas, but like I said before, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thought about these things. So feel free to share if you do have some ideas of your own as well. Who knows what will happen. But let's start by talking about a purpose. What is the purpose of these expeditions? So at the moment you travel to Milepost 0, go into the instance space, speak to Marley and start a caravan. That will spawn a caravan somewhere within this circle. And once you activate it, well, you just go around until you get to the end. Do you go to a settlement? No. You just deposit your goodies at a box on the side of the road. There's nobody around. We don't know who's going to pick these things up. If anything, those boxes should be prime looting targets for raiders or blood eagles or anybody else who wants free goodies, right? Perhaps even other players. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't implement some mechanic whereby other players could steal that loot. But in any case, like I said before, it's kind of an activity for the sake of an activity, right? You just go around in a circle. But think about where Milepost 0 is. This here is West Virginia, where the game is set. Here's Virginia, and here's the Savage Divide, or at least what's represented in the game as the Savage Divide. So if we zoom in a bit, we'll see Beckley. So from a geographical perspective, Skyline Valley is somewhere around here-ish, although technically speaking it's over here, I believe. Yeah, Shenandoah National Park. That's Skyline Valley, right? But let's assume that it is south of Beckley. Let's say for a second that it's around here. But if you zoom in, you'll see that there's a lot of farmland, especially if you move further into Virginia, right? And if you look at Virginia itself, it's not exactly the most heavily urbanized location in the world. So maybe if the nukes all fell, we know that Washington would have definitely been nuked. Same with Baltimore and all of these cities to the northeast. But if we look at Virginia itself, Richmond maybe got nuked. Norfolk most definitely got nuked. But look at all this area. Look at all this area, which is just all green farmland. There is a bit of forest and there is a bit of wilderness, but you can see all of the farmland, right? It's not exactly a prime target for a nuke. And if you look at West Virginia itself, you'll see that most of it is fairly wild. There's not that much in the way of farmland. So we can kind of assume that the area beyond the Savage Divide, or at least the area that's beyond the map, is fairly fertile, at least in comparison to West Virginia. But coming back to the game, you can see that Milepost 0 is located on the southernmost edge of the map. So in other words, there are lands beyond this which will never be part of the game. And like I showed you just then, it's probably somewhere in Virginia. In other words, a more fertile area than what we have here. Okay, so Milepost 0 is a trading outpost, right? So if we keep that in mind, from a lore perspective, Milepost 0 should be a trading gateway. So theoretically, we should have caravans coming up from the south, hitting Milepost 0 as a stopover, and then Marley should create a caravan for us to escort further into Appalachia. And if we go northwards, if you talk to the people at Foundation or White Spring, you know that they're always talking about needing more supplies, needing more materials, just being short on everything. Heck, there's even a daily quest at White Spring where you provide materials. Granted, it's junk because of the game mechanics, but theoretically that could easily be something like supplies, or whatever the caravans bring up, right? But if we look further to the north, just beyond the edge of the map, that's where Pittsburgh is. Now, Pittsburgh will definitely never become part of the main map. It just can't be, there's literally no space. But we know that the pit is always short on materials. But if we think about the pit, it has a lot of industrial capacity still left over. It has steel mills and other facilities to create industrial products, which should be extremely scarce in a post-nuclear scenario. You can almost guarantee that the people at White Spring and the Foundation definitely need those materials. So let me ask you a question. What is the point of a trading caravan? If I was to share my answer with you, it would be that it takes goods from a place where they're more abundant to a place where they're less abundant, and the purpose is to generate money that the caravan owner then keeps for themselves as profit. So from the south, we should get foodstuffs coming in, and from the north, we should get industrial goods coming in. So let's give caravans a purpose. Let's make them run from either the extreme north of the map or the extreme south of the map, and then go to a destination. Could be Foundation, could be White Spring, or it could be from Milepost 0 all the way up to the pit. So in other words, from the extreme south of the map to the extreme north of the map. And the further the caravan goes, the more profit you generate, because the goods are scarcer. That would actually make caravans a far more lore-friendly addition to the game. There's many other ways you could do it, but that's one way to give caravans a lore-friendly purpose. But then we have to think about the mechanics as they are now. So at the moment we invest caps and we run the caravan and we get supplies. And then those supplies get used to improve your outpost or improve your Brahmin. So we could have a similar situation where you invest more caps depending on the distance, but you get more supplies, which you could invest into improving your Brahmin itself. But let's extend that idea a bit further. At the moment, other people can actually join your caravan and escort it to get a tenth of the reward, and possibly higher depending on how the devs choose to update their rewards for escorting. But essentially, you get a portion of the rewards that the owner does. But how about we change that and make it so that everybody who participates in a caravan has to invest the same amount of money. So instead of escorting someone else's caravan, and presumably being an employee or a contractor to protect the caravan, everybody who participates is an investor. That way everybody who's part of that caravan will get the maximum rewards. And I don't know if this is even possible, but let me throw this idea out there. What if you create a separate group called Caravans? And this is the part where I don't know if it's even possible to do with the current game mechanics, but enforce it so that if you don't invest before the caravan starts, then you do not get to participate in that caravan. I don't know if that's even possible, like I said before, because at the moment everybody can join a group at any time. But I think the better situation would be to have people join a caravan and participate from the beginning to the end. I don't know if it's even possible to enforce, but that's just an idea. It would actually make people more invested in the caravan. Okay, and this is where the major change that I'm proposing comes into it. Instead of us starting here, teleporting to some location around here, then just following a Brahmin around, make it so that the Brahmin follows you. So in other words, you set your path, depending on your destination, and you follow the path, and then the Brahmin follows you. You should probably enforce it so that only the roads get followed, which may require a small change to link up Shenandoah with the rest of the road network in Appalachia. But if you did something like that, that would actually involve people in terms of planning out the route and then deciding how they want to proceed. So you could, for example, go here, take the road up here, then go up to Foundation, or you could choose to go to White Spring, or you could go further north, follow the freeways, or the highways, whatever they are, all the way up to the pit. Maybe have a road following the Ohio River further northwards, right? And that would be the pit. So then it's up to you to decide how you want to avoid the dangers, such as they are. And then a lot of the investments that you make on your Brahmin, like say higher speed, would actually make more sense. And because of the distances involved, then we're talking about a significant saving if you invest in your Brahmin. One of the reasons why I'm proposing this change is because caravans at the moment are purely about combat. There are some other random encounters like trick or treat or the logs on the road or stuff like that, but fundamentally they're about combat. You start with combat and you end with a stronger encounter depending on the size of your caravan. But let's change that. One of the things that the game does really well, if you take the time to look around, is the environment. A lot of the locations and a lot of the environment is really well done in the game. And I think that if we change the caravan system to traverse through a lot of these landscapes, that would actually encourage people to look around instead of just fast traveling from point A to point B, like you end up doing in many cases. A lot of effort went into making up this map and these locations, all the random encounters, which become completely useless once people start fast traveling. So I think we could make caravans into a useful way to actually encourage people to take a look at the environment. Take a look around. Maybe we could make it so that we have to carry feed for the Brahmin, or alternatively, we need to stop at certain safe locations like say Nuka Walden Tour or Foundation. And then you need to think about planning your route in a more efficient way. And of course, the caravan is always subject to random encounters and everything like that. Not that I would genuinely expect random encounters to actually challenge some of the stronger players around. But, like I said before, it would actually make the landscape have a purpose, which I think is something that gets lost once you hit level 100, 150 or something like that. How many people actually spent the time to look around? In a different video where I actually drank some vintage Nuka Shine, I ended up teleporting to an area which was around here-ish? South of Foundation. I think it might have been around here-ish. But I ended up waking up in a Skyrim Easter egg, which I'd never seen before. So unless you actually go looking for those things, you will just never see them. And I think that's a real shame. Because one of Fallout 76's real strengths is the environmental storytelling. This is one of the highlights of the game, and I think that the caravan system could be changed to highlight that. In any case, I've said before that the caravan system as it is now does kind of lack a sense of purpose, as well as some issues with the execution. But the idea of providing people with a different activity, some variety, and a camp that they could customize, those principles that they started with, they were good. But the problem is that the execution hasn't quite met that vision. And what I'm hoping is that by making videos like these, that will encourage people to put their ideas forward. And hopefully Bethesda will at some point listen. Because if we continue down this path of just making activities for the sake of activities, I think a lot of the value of Fallout 76 will be lost. Because if you're no different from any other MMO, then what's the point of Fallout 76?